The helicopter blades are deafening. 500 feet above the ground, a soldier grips the side of the aircraft and looks down into total darkness. Wind is tearing at his uniform. The drop zone is somewhere below, invisible, uncertain. And right beside him, a dog. Calm, alert, focused. Not shaking, not whimpering, not trying to back away from the open door. The soldier jumps. The dog jumps. Together, they disappear into the night. So here's the question that should stop you cold right now. How does a dog, an animal, willingly jump out of a helicopter without hesitation? Most people see a military working dog and think, oh, they just trained it really well, like you'd teach a dog to sit or shake hands. But that's not what's happening here, because training alone doesn't explain this. You can train a dog to follow commands. You can train it to find explosives. You can train it to track a scent across miles of jungle. But training doesn't override fear. Fear is biological, it's ancient, it's hardwired. And jumping out of a moving aircraft at hundreds of feet in the air should terrify any living creature. So why doesn't it terrify these dogs? What scientists and military researchers discovered when they actually studied this is that the answer has almost nothing to do with obedience. It has everything to do with something far deeper, something that goes back thousands of years. And once you understand it, you'll never look at dogs or loyalty the same way again. To understand why military dogs jump, you first have to understand what a dog actually is beneath the surface. Not the pet version, not the family companion sleeping on your couch, the original version. Dogs descended from wolves somewhere between 15,000 and 40,000 years ago, and wolves are pack animals built on one single operating system. Trust your pack, follow your leader, survive together. Researchers at the University of Vienna conducted studies on how dogs respond to human social cues, and what they found was extraordinary. Dogs don't just obey humans, they attune to humans. They read our body language, our breathing, our energy. They can detect stress hormones in our sweat before we even know we're anxious. And here's the critical part. When a dog has bonded deeply with a human handler, that human becomes their pack. Not a trainer, not an owner, a pack member, a leader, someone their brain is literally wired to trust with their life. Scientists call this interspecies bonding, and in military dogs, this bond is taken to an extreme that most people find hard to believe. A 2015 study published in the journal Science found that when dogs and their owners make eye contact, both experience a surge of oxytocin. That's the same bonding chemical that fires between a mother and her newborn child. So when a military dog looks at its handler before a jump, it's not calculating risk, it's not weighing options. It's doing what its brain has been wired to do for thousands of years. It's trusting its pack. But here's where it gets interesting. That bond alone still doesn't fully explain the jump, because something else is happening too. Let's go back to that helicopter. The dogs used in military operations are almost exclusively Belgian Malinois and German Shepherds. These aren't random breeds. They were selected over decades because of one specific trait: drive. Not aggression, not size, not strength. Drive. The obsessive, relentless, almost addictive need to work, chase, retrieve, and engage. A Belgian Malinois doesn't think of a mission as danger. Its brain reads it as activation, as the thing it was built to do. Researchers at the University of Vienna describe it this way. Imagine someone offered you the one thing you love more than anything in the world every single day. For these dogs, the mission is that thing. Now combine that drive with the bond to their handler, and then add one more layer: desensitization training. Military working dogs don't just wake up one day and jump out of helicopters. They're introduced to every element of that experience, slowly, carefully, over months. First, the noise of a helicopter's engine on the ground, then sitting inside a stationary aircraft, then moving aircraft at low altitude, then practicing the jump from just a few feet, then higher, then higher. Each step is paired with something the dog loves: play, reward, praise from their handler. The dog's brain begins to associate the entire experience, the noise, the wind, the open door, the altitude, not with threat, but with reward. What looks like bravery from the outside is actually a very deliberately rewired set of associations. But here's something that surprised even the trainers. When they studied the dog's behavior during actual operational jumps versus training jumps, they found something they didn't expect. The dogs were calmer on real missions, not more anxious, calmer. And the working theory? When the handler is fully focused, fully locked in, the dog reads that energy. It synchronizes with it. The handler's calm confidence actually transfers to the dog.
Which brings us to one of the most famous military dogs in recent history. His name was Cairo. Cairo was a Belgian Malinois and a member of SEAL Team 6. On the night of May 1, 2011, Cairo was part of Operation Neptune's Spear, the raid that resulted in the death of Osama bin Laden. Cairo's job that night was one of the most dangerous in the entire operation: to track, alert, and if necessary, apprehend anyone attempting to flee the compound. In an environment of total uncertainty, complete darkness, and one of the highest stakes military operations in modern history, Cairo performed without hesitation. He jumped, he tracked, he worked, just like thousands of nights before. Because to Cairo, it wasn't the most dangerous night in history. It was just another mission with his pack. But Cairo isn't alone. There's a longer tradition here that most people don't know about. Military dogs have been jumping from aircraft since World War II. The first recorded use of canine parachute units was by the British Special Operations Executive in the early 1940s. Dogs were dropped behind enemy lines to assist resistance fighters, carrying messages, detecting ambushes, and tracking enemy movement through terrain that was invisible to human senses. These early dogs wore custom harnesses, strapped to their handlers for tandem jumps, or in some cases, deployed alone with static line parachutes. The fact that this worked, the fact that these dogs didn't panic, didn't thrash, didn't fight the harness in free fall, was a revelation to the scientists and military strategists watching, because it proved something profound. A dog's trust in its human can override one of the most primal instincts in biology, the instinct for self-preservation. Let's slow down for a second, because there's something deeply moving happening underneath all of this. These dogs don't get a briefing before a mission. Nobody explains the objective to them. They don't know what country they're in. They don't know what the stakes are. They can't understand geopolitics or strategy or what the mission means for the world. All they know is this: my person is going, I go too. That's it. That's the entire calculation. And somehow, in a world full of complexity and conflict and competing human interests, that simplicity is what makes them irreplaceable. Colonel Robert Riggle, a military affairs commentator who has spent years studying the role of working dogs in combat, has described it simply: the dog doesn't question, the dog doesn't hesitate, the dog goes. The handlers who work with these animals often describe the bond as unlike anything they've experienced with another human. Not because it's more important, but because it's more pure. There's no agenda, no ego, no hidden motive. The dog trusts completely, loves completely, gives completely. And for soldiers operating in environments where trust is the most valuable currency on earth, that unconditional loyalty becomes something almost sacred. Many handlers have spoken publicly about the psychological effect of having their dog beside them in combat. Studies on soldier well-being, including research from the Walter Reed Army Research Institute, found that the presence of a bonded military dog reduces cortisol levels in handlers during high-stress operations. In other words, the dog calms the human, and the human calms the dog, each one making the other more capable, more focused, more effective. It's not a soldier with a weapon. It's a team, a unit, a partnership built on something that science is still struggling to fully explain. Here's what this all comes back to. When you watch that dog stand at the open helicopter door and jump, you're not watching a trained animal following a command. You're watching the result of tens of thousands of years of co-evolution. Humans and dogs have been shaping each other, biologically, psychologically, emotionally, for longer than recorded history. Dogs learn to read us. We learn to rely on them. And somewhere in that long partnership, something extraordinary happened. The dog didn't just become useful to humans, the dog became part of us, part of our teams, our families, our missions. And what military dogs reveal at the absolute extreme edge of that partnership is that a dog's trust in a human can reach a point where no environment is too dangerous, no sound too loud, no height too great, no darkness too deep. What looks like fearlessness from the outside is actually something more remarkable. It's complete trust. And the most humbling part of all of this? The dog has no idea how extraordinary that is. It's not trying to be brave. It's not trying to be remarkable. It's just doing what it's always done, following its person, into the dark, into the unknown, without hesitation. Because that's what you do for your pack. So now you know why military dogs jump from helicopters. But here's something that should keep you up tonight. Researchers studying military working dogs recently noticed something they couldn't explain. Some dogs, in the moments before a mission, begin to exhibit behaviors that no one trained them to show, almost as if they know what's coming, almost as if they're preparing themselves. And scientists aren't sure whether to call it instinct, intelligence, or something else entirely. Because the more we study these animals, the more we realize we might have underestimated them, far more than we thought.